Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guests today are Zack Bush and Laurie Friedman. They are here to celebrate the Little Book of Presidential Elections. Before we invite Zack and Laurie in, we want to let you know that we have a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Annie Mouse's second Route 66 photo journal, The Journey East by Dr. Anne Slanina, is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. If you are interested in Route 66 and the route westward from Joliet, Illinois to Needles, California, then this photo journal by Anne Slanina from the Annie Mouse Adventure Series should be on your kid's shelf. In this fun book, Annie Mouse and her family take a road trip through 8 states, exploring the funnier and fascinating destinations on this iconic highway. Annie is so excited to document all the fun moments of her family trip in her photo journal. Author Dr. Anne Slanina, along with the illustrator Melinda Hood, jammed this photo journal full of interesting places worth a stop, worth a photo, worth a meal, or worth a detour. The book features the entire iconic U.S. highway from Joliet to Santa Monica. The fun and fascinating details make each stretch compelling and unique. You also get random facts about the Hollywood Walk of Fame, the Santa Monica Pier, Aztec Hotel, Madonna of the Trail statue in Upland, the California Route 66 Museum, Guardians of Route 66, the Mojave Museum of History and Art, and so much more. This is a really great and fun book, and if your family has not been able to take their annual trip, be sure to pick up this book and take a trip with Annie Mouse. Her second Route 66 photo journal, The Journey East, is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Joining us right now from Miami Beach in Florida, we are so excited to welcome the authors of the Little Book of Presidential Elections, Laurie Friedman, and returning to the show, Zack Bush. Laurie, Zack, how are you?
Excellent. Thanks so much for having us.
Doing great. We're thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Zack is returning to the show. He was on the show about a year or two ago. Celebrating a beautiful, beautiful book, Made from Me. I'm right with it. I remember the title correctly?
You nailed it.
Yeah. We I just have to let you know, your publishers of Made for Me asked me to run a little giveaway, and this beautiful family in Florida, up in Palatka, Florida, won that download, and they that free book. They absolutely love it.
Awesome. Well, we hope you're going to run a giveaway today with some of our new books, which we're happy to do with you as well.
That's great. Hey, Laurie, why don't we go to you? Let us know, what is the Little Book of Presidential Elections?
So, we both feel that that this is just such an important time to vote, for people to understand what's going on in the world around us. And, of course, adults have a handle on that, but kids are seeing a whole lot of what's going on television. They're hearing it on the radio. They're hearing discussions at the dinner table. And so we just wanted to write a book that would really help kids understand what's going on. So the Little Book of Presidential Elections explains the whole idea behind a presidential election, how it takes place once every 4 years, what it means, how it happens. And as part of that, we've tried to really explain what it means to vote and what it means to live in a democracy. So we've kind of broken it down, hopefully, for the very youngest of audiences in a way that they can really understand and appreciate what they're hearing around them.
Yeah. And it's true, Zack, kids these days, I remember hearing about elections when I was younger, but we could always, kind of get away from it, get out on the street, play baseball with our buddies, or street hockey or whatever it is, we could get away from it. But now with social media and every kid having a device and all the divisiveness that's going on these days, I imagine it could be hard for kids to get away from this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Given, I think, the political climate, given the COVID-19, worldwide shutdown in some capacity, everywhere we look, the election is in our face, whether it's in our yard signs, in our TV, on the internet. So I think more than ever, kids and young ones hear parents and people speaking about the upcoming election. And Laurie and I think that it's super important to let kids know that, it is a civic duty, responsibility, and almost an obligation to vote, because it's such an amazing right that we have. And one of the things that, we worked on in this book is we made sure not to get into political parties, not to say Democrats are this or Republicans are that, but just to let everyone know that there are, that people run based on their beliefs and what they believe in. And even if you don't believe in what the other side believes in, it's always important to listen and to respect what other people have to say. And, we're really just trying to get that message out there. And more than anything that, obviously children, kindergarten, nursery, toddler, first grade, second grade, they're not close to being able to vote. But that day where they turn 18 isn't as far away as it seems. And it's really important, I think more than ever to let everyone know that, it's this wonderful right that we have living in the United States, and it should be embraced and protected, and how absolutely important it is.
Teaching kids that it's important to listen to opposing opinions and to respect people who have opposing opinions. That should be taught to adults.
Most definitely.
Because I don't know about you, but I don't see that happening anyway. You definitely don't see that happening on social media.
No, and you don't necessarily see it happening even in the presidential debates. There's a lot of hostility, both sides. I'm not getting political here. But, I remember growing up where I would actually get assignments from my teachers, even at a young age, to watch to watch debates, take notes. And like, I was thinking, now granted, my children are only 5 years old, 4 years old, and a newborn that's basically a week old. But even if they were a little older, I would not have wanted them to watch what, the most recent presidential debate. The vice presidential debate was much more what I would call civil and quality, where again, I'm not trying to get too political. I'm just trying to point out that it is very important that there is respect shown always, especially, we have to, monkey see, monkey do. Kids see how adults behave and how parents behave and what is acceptable and what isn't. And I think it is a very important lesson, as you point out, for adults as well to listen to, everyone has their opinion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. And it's important you don't have to agree with it, but it is important to listen and hear what the other side is saying, because if you stop listening, there's no way ever to reach middle ground.
Laurie, that's, it's such an important point that, if we're not listening to others, there's no way for us to learn and to grow.
Absolutely. You know what? We just feel so passionately that this is something that needs to happen, obviously with adults, but, with kids in their own communities, in their schools, in their families. If you don't listen, you don't know, you don't understand what's going on around you. So we really feel just so strongly committed that this is a message that is timely, that's important, and that starts on a micro level with little kids. And, if they can listen, if they can understand what the issues are, they can weigh in with their own opinions, but unless you hear someone else's, you really can't be part of a dialogue. So hopefully this book encourages them to always have their ears open and perhaps their mouths shut a little more. I think of that song in Hamilton, which I loved, and really you got to just listen. You really have to sometimes open your ears.
Laurie, Zack hit on this idea that voting is an obligation, and that's something I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit more, because I don't think enough of us realize that. I'm baffled every year when I see this statistics of how few people actually vote of the ones who are eligible, and then add on to the fact that there are so many people out there who don't even take the time to register to vote. So the percentage of people who are voting and making the decisions is nowhere near what it should be.
I'm right there with you. Everybody, maybe you can recommend this book for adults too.
Yes.
I think that everybody should be voting right now. More than ever, it's so important to make your voice heard. And, voting is a privilege. It's a right. It's a privilege. And this is something that, we really want kids to understand that we're so lucky living in this country that you have the right to have an opinion and to vote. And so hopefully when they read this book, they'll really understand why it's such a privilege and an honor to get to vote. And, I think that this is a conversation that needs to be had for all ages.
Yep, absolutely.
We all have to do our part. Yeah,
if I can expand on that just a little bit, I can say, I'm in my early 40s, but I can certainly say that I am guilty of growing up and not really appreciating this amazing right that we have to vote, almost taken for granted. You can vote when you're 18. I was guilty of it. Now I have always voted. But it wasn't really, in my mind growing up, it wasn't something that was really sold to me as so special. And it really should be sold, if it's sold to children as a very special right, I think that is just one of many ways that we could increase voter registration, voter turnout, and so on, that it really needs to be embraced. Not just you turn 18, you have the right to vote, but that it's this really special thing that we get to help through our, help to make sure that our own voices are heard, and that in our own little way, and we point this out in the book that, why does my vote matter? I'm just one person. Well, the book explains that if you're just one person and there's another one person, that all those votes come together and they get to form, future decisions, and it's truly impactful.
Yeah. Laurie, this is a timely book, of course. The presidential elections are right around the corner. But I have a feeling that this is a book that is timeless, that folks, it's a great book to have in their library, because these are messages that, Zack was saying, we need to sell kids on this, and we need to help, them really instill these values and make them part of themselves, not just every 4 years.
For sure. And that's something Zack and I talked about as we wrote the book. And one of the things that we do in the book is we really point out how politicians and candidates are all about the issues, and that, one of the things that we want kids to understand is that different candidates stand for different things, and voting for one is really based on what's important to you. So we brought up a lot of things that we hope will really resonate with kids: saving the planet, recycling, better schools, education, healthcare. And we tried to frame the conversation in a way that kids can say, well, you know what, that's important to me, so that's why I would need to vote for that candidate. And so we really tried to bring this down to a very, very young level so that kids can understand that it's about issues and it's about what's important to them. And you're right, it's not just about what happens right now in this presidential election, but moving forward, what's important to each and every young person is saving the planet and doing their part to, be part of that important. And so hopefully if they can see that, there's an issue that's important to them, that's something that will kind of get them into the conversation and help them be part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And on that note, also, sorry if I can interject again, it's that, we had to be very careful with our word choice. So for example, Laurie mentioned healthcare because we're three adults talking. If you said healthcare to a first grader, kindergarten, pre-K, they probably don't know what that encompasses. So Laurie did a great job in the book of coming up with, what if we just say doctors and medicine for all, where that's at least an idea that, a kid or a child would understand what it stands for. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it was simplifying these often more complex terms that we hear in budget and this and that, but stuff in a way that, young ones and our little ones could understand and process.
Yeah.
So, Jed, let me add one more thing
Sure.
to that effect. Fortunately, Zack has two young children who are 6 and 4, and so they're our little focus group. And anytime we write something, we always run it past them to make sure they understand it. So we figure if they do, our readers will too. So we keep them very busy. We've written now, I think we're on our 8th or 9th book, and we've had to get their approval at every round. So they're a nice little focus group for us.
And our toughest critics.
Yeah, I bet. Well, again, going back, breaking things down and making them simple, and I don't mean this in jest at all. I think that that's one of the things that turns off a lot of adult and young adult voters is that there's so much jargon that gets thrown around sometimes that folks don't understand, and they feel, I can't get involved in this. I don't even know what they're talking about.
Right. I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. And that was actually one of the most, I would say that, and touching base a little bit on what the Electoral College is, because that's a little bit, not as, it's not like it's not, we had to do our best, I think, in explaining, what the Electoral College was and simplifying those issues. Those were our biggest challenges in writing this book, but ones that I feel confident that Laurie and I, did our best and simplified it and made it understandable as best as possible. Yeah.
So, Laurie, how did this partnership happen? You just said you're on your 8th or 9th the little book of. How did you two come together to create this series?
That's a great question. I'm actually going to turn that one over to Zack and let him answer that. I'll jump in after.
Because Laurie would not be as honest, and I'm going to tell you the honest truth, is that I stalked Laurie. Made for Me never gets written without Laurie. Laurie started out as my mentor. Quickly, but, for Made for Me. Truly, that book never gets written, never gets recognized in the same way, or maybe not even at all without her, honestly. She was that instrumental in pushing me and getting that book out there to the world. So she started out as my mentor, who I basically had to stalk because she didn't know who I was until, she finally answered my call. And in an irony of all irony, she actually lived 2 doors down from my parents, but I never knew it. And then we quickly became friends and then quickly became writing partners, now in the space of I would say over, 3.5 years. Laurie and I had been collaborating, working on several projects, not necessarily full force, but started several different of these books. And then COVID gave us the opportunity to really buckle down and finish them. So I'll let Laurie add on to that, but she would not.
That's all true. And I'll add this. This is a case of 2 heads are better than one. And honestly, Zack has a tremendous work ethic, and I'd like to think I do too. And so, you know what? We just jumped into this full force, and we have 2 different series of books. And you know what? We've put our hearts and souls into this, and it's been really fun to do it together, to have each other to bounce ideas off of, and sometimes I'll see things one way and he'll see it another, and I think that it's just been a great, fun partnership to put our ideas together and sort of blend all that. And we've just been very prolific over the last couple.
And anyone who does anything creatively, whether it's making any sort of art form, writing music, singing, performing, writing books, it's really a labor of love. It's not really, Laurie and I didn't jump into this venture, for financial reasons. We jumped in because this is something that we love doing. We love putting together, quality products for young ones to read. Laurie has 2 adult children who are, voracious readers, and she was reading to them early on and often. And now I'm kind of in that role with my family. And I have found that one of my favorite things to do with my children, my oldest is learning to read now, but has always been early on reading with them, reading to them, seeing the expressions on their face. And it's just a great way to see their minds at work. And I think if you instill this early on, it has benefits. And I say this not as a doctor, but I just think that it has tremendous benefits for the children, and it's great bonding time for the parents as well.
Absolutely. We've had so many experts on the show talking about, yes, obviously you read to your kids, you help them learn how to read, they build a vocabulary, but what that bonding and that closeness that comes from spending time together. You are the most important person in your kid's life. And the fact that the person that they admire more than anybody else chooses to spend time with them. What a great statement that is. And Laurie, you probably experience this when you're sitting down with your kids and you're reading with them and you ask them, what do you think about this? What's going on in the story? You're empowering the kids.
Absolutely. You know what? Reading with my kids was something that was probably I felt one of the most important things I did as a parent. And this is kind of a cool story, but my kids are now 25 and they're 28, so they're grown. But we always read books together, and when they were little, we loved reading picture books. And I remember when they first started to read independently, and they would switch to chapter books, and I would sit there with them, and they'd read a word, and then I'd read the harder words, and I was still really a part of the conversation. And then I remember so clearly when it all just shifted, when they became independent readers, and I realized they didn't need me to sit there with them and read, but I still wanted to be a part of that experience. So when they were probably 6 and 8, I came up with this idea that whatever they would read, I would read it too. So we had a little mother-son book club and a mother-daughter book club. And through the years, if they read it, I read it. And I've read all sorts of different things through the years, but beyond what, getting them to read and seeing what they were reading, it really opened up a dialogue with my children that exists to this day that I know we would not have had but for books. And now when they read a book, I read a book. And you know what? It's a window into their hearts and souls that only books could provide. And I'm so blessed and so grateful that we've had this throughout our lives. Mm-hmm. It's very special time to this day, and even when they're far away, when they're in their own homes and reading, it's a connection that I feel in my heart, and I know they do too.
Yeah. Zach, you are going to – Laurie and I experienced the same thing, and the reason I started the Reading with Your Kids podcast is that as I look back at the relationship that I have with my 24 and 27-year-old, I know that foundation was built reading, doing what you're doing with your kids right now, sitting down and reading with them, helping them develop that love of reading. And so I'm jealous in a lot of ways, Zach, because I remember those times. It was such a precious time in my life.
It is. It's a nightly activity in my house. We do good night reading. My wife and I, we take turns, one with one kid, one with the other, then we switch. But it is so important. And one of the things that I've learned from that and from reading other people's books, not ours, is that we really, especially at the age they're at now, we really enjoy books that create a conversation and can kind of take on a life of their own, that we're stimulated by the book. So that is something that Laurie and I always try to keep in mind. And in all of our books, the 2 different series, there are always, of course, there's always ideas that we want parents and kids to have, but we always target certain pages that are specific just to start a conversation, either while they're reading, after they're reading, maybe the next night after they've had time to think about it. So that is something that is very important to us. And just as Laurie treasured it, and I really like the book club, I had never heard that story. And that is something that I certainly will be adapting because I just love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've talked about the Little Book series. Laurie, you and Zach have both alluded to your other series. What's that other series?
Well, I'm going to actually let Zach answer that too, because it's based on something very personal to Zach.
So my kids, probably like a lot of other kids, are obsessed. My son and daughter are obsessed with superheroes, and not necessarily like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. Of course, they love all those, but they just love like the idea of having superpowers and being super strong and super fast and saving cities, battling bad guys, protecting the planet. So Laurie and I have a series where it's basically the first book in the series was called Superheroes Don't Clean Up Their Rooms, or Do They? The second one, just to give you an idea, Superheroes Don't Have Bedtimes, or Do They? The next one that's coming out, I think in about a month or so, is Superheroes Don't Get Scared, or Do They? And it's basically about 2 kids who happen to be named Ace and Ava, which are 2 of my 3. And it just tells the story of these fun things in these real life situations, but in a delightful way. So, for example, with the Superheroes Don't Clean Up Their Rooms, or Do They? At the end, they're able to earn their Power of Organization badge, and they can go to our website, print out a free badge, free coloring stuff, and basically it teaches kids in a way that like there's a benefit to being organized. What's organization? If you ask that to a 4 or 5-year-old, they might not know, but this book is a way to explain it and how there's more room for activities. They can find the pieces in their board games next time they want to play. I can't tell you how many times in my house we go to play a board game that one of the kids put away, and voila, we're missing puzzle pieces, we're missing cards, and you can't play the game like that. So we try to take ideas And, you know, the superheroes don't have bedtimes, and it, you know, teaches them that everyone, even superheroes, need the power of a good night's sleep. And at the end of each book, they earn a badge, you know, signifying the superhero power that they now have, and a lesson learned where they're not the kind of superheroes that can leap over tall buildings or fly high in the air, but they're their own little superheroes. And it's a series that, yes, like Laurie said, is near and dear to my heart because inspiration is in my house daily, whether they're playing with their fake lightsabers or their fake swords or they're running, whatever it is, or jumping super high. So that's the story of that series.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Just to add to that, the idea is that you don't have to be able to leap over tall buildings to be a superhero. There are so many everyday skills that make you a superhero. You know, organizing your room, getting a good night's sleep, learning how to deal with fears. Those are all everyday powers, but they are empowering when you understand them. So we've really tried to, you know, really open up kids' minds to thinking about how they lead their lives every day and how they can improve their lives. And one of the things that we really want our books to do, besides put the questions out there, is to reward kids with something fun. So when they go to our website for both of the series we've done, the Little Book Of series and the Little Superhero series, there's all kinds of activities and badges they can print out. So we want kids, once they read, not to just, you know, the book closes, it's done. We want them to ask the questions, to remember the conversation, to go to the website and to have some fun. So hopefully it's a more experiential experience than just reading a book.
And it's free. We don't say, oh, here, you know, pay for this download or do this. We want it to really be, we want them to, you know, because I know what my kids like, you know, that they get excited if every time they finish one of our books, they want to go to the website and they want daddy to print out the badge for them so they can color it and make it look like the real badge, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, some of the coloring pages. That it's just an activity that, like Laurie said, takes it from book to paper and an activity. And it's just nice to be able to connect the two.
That's awesome. Well, we mentioned websites. Why don't we let the folks know where the websites are?
So the best website to find us is www.booksbyzack, Z-A-C-K, and Laurie, Laurie.com, booksbyzackandlaurie.com. There you can contact us directly. You can read about our backgrounds, read why we got into this, read about our own superheroes, read about the books. Of course, it shows you where you can get the books. Even if you don't get the books, you're allowed to download for free the badges and coloring pages. So it's not tied to that. And so that's the best way you can find us.
Awesome. Well, we've had a great time speaking to the superhero team behind the Little Book of Presidential Elections and so many more. Laurie Friedman and Zack Bush. Zack, Laurie, thanks so much for being part of the show.
Thank you, Jed.
Thank you, Jed, for having us. We're grateful.
Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Tam Warner-Minton. She'll be here to celebrate all fish faces. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, want to thank our friends Zack Bush and Laurie Friedman. Be sure to check out the Little Book of Presidential Elections. Also want to thank my team, starting with my daughter Alejandra Doherty, my producer Fatima Khan, my author Ambassador Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all of her support, but most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.